Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Kurt. I am the Executive Director here at the East Central Iowa Council of Governments, otherwise affectionately known as ECICOG. I know that we did have a few folks sign up that weren't within our region, but just as a quick reminder, we serve Lynn, Johnson, Benton, Iowa, Washington, and Jones counties. If you are not from those counties, you're probably served by another COG, and we're happy to kind of connect you with who the right individual would be. And so this is one of our mini Turbo Talk series sessions. We've got, in addition to our sessions today, we've got two coming up. We've got a session on February 24th, which is also going to be on CDBG, but looking specifically at downtown revitalization. And then on March 10th, and we haven't publicized this one yet, but we will be talking about the East Central Iowa Housing Trust Fund. And that trust fund serves Jones, Benton, Iowa, and Washington counties. And so if you're from those counties, I think that might be a really good session to sit in on because the Housing Trust Fund can do a lot of interesting things. But with respect to today, we always promise with the Turbo Talk that we're going to try and just have 30 minutes concise information on a specific topic. And today's a little unusual because we're actually going to have two sessions back to back. And really, they're going to be led by two of my wonderful colleagues, starting with Megan Prestegard, who's an environmental specialist, who's going to be talking about CDBG, water, sewer, programs, as well as the wastewater drinking water treatment financial assistance program, which is quite a mouthful. And we'll spend the first half hour on that. Depending on how much time that takes, we might have a slight break of 5 minutes or so where we'll go silent, and then we'll start our next session at 1:30, and that's going to be with Paula Mitchell, who's our housing director, and she's going to be actually talking about all of the CDBG programs that the state of Iowa just released for the upcoming year. So we've got a lot to cover today. And just as a reminder, we will be sending out the slides as well as a link to the recording after the event. They'll probably go out tomorrow. And we post all of our Turbo Talks on our website. So if you're ever curious about this topic or another topic that we've covered, you can always find it there. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Megan to kind of kick us off on our first topic. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. All right,
Thank-
Megan.
All right, thanks, Karen. Hi, I'm Megan Prestegard. I'm going to talk about CDBG, water, sewer, and I'm first going to start about talking about CDBG. New this year is it's not just water and sewer; it also can cover stormwater projects. So water, sewer, and stormwater CDBGs, they used to be offered 4 times a year, but they're now going to be offered twice per year starting in 2026. This year, tentatively, they will be due May 1st and September 1st. The maximum amount you can apply to ask for is $500,000 and grant length is 3 years. The program is funded by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and administered by the state through the Iowa Economic Development Authority. The next slide is about, we'll talk a little bit about eligibility, and this is still just for CDBG. In order to apply for a CDBG, you need to meet a national objective. So usually this means, unless there's a disaster, you need to benefit low to moderate income persons according to the American Community Survey data. I added a link here that'll be in the slides for when we send it out. Basically, you need to have over 51% of your population have a low to moderate income according to this data. You may only have one active CDBG grant per program at a time. So you could have a water sewer and a DTR CDBG at the same time, but you can't have two water sewer CDBGs, for example. This is newer. In the last year, they changed this rule. It used to be that you could have two of the same kind. And then you need to be not an entitlement city, so your population needs to be below 50,000. So here are some prerequisites for applying for CDBG water sewer. You need to demonstrate your LMI status. And this can either be with ACS, the American Community Survey data, or with an income survey, which I'll talk about on the next slide. For all water projects, you need to have a preliminary engineering report that's approved by Iowa DNR. For all wastewater projects, you need to have an approved facility plan from Iowa DNR. And then stormwater projects is to be announced. They haven't released yet what approved plan you'll need to apply for stormwater projects yet. But if you do have a stormwater project that you're interested in looking into, just feel free to reach out and we will look into that and obviously let you know as soon as we know. Um,
Megan, with respect to LMI status, is that
yes.
something folks can look up online, or is it best for them just to call us?
You can that link on the previous page is the most recent posted on IEDA. But yeah, they can feel free to call us, and it's probably the easiest way. But um, if you don't want to look it up, but it is on the IEDA website
Th-
currently.
Thank you.
Yep. Um, so as far as approved DNR construction permits, IEDA was saying that they were going to require this prior to application this year, but they are not required. It helps your application to show readiness, but they're not required before application. You have to prove that you have applied for one, but it does not have to be approved yet, which is the same as it was last year and the year before. In order to apply, you also need to have like a cost estimate and all your other funding secured. So all the local funding must be committed and documented. It could be a loan or just straight from city funds. If you have city funds, it needs to be a resolution that's been signed by the city. And then if you get like a state revolving fund loan from Iowa, for example, which is pretty common, you need to be on their intended use plan. So this is a little more about income. So if you do not qualify according to American Community Survey, but you think that your city or service area may qualify as 51% low to moderate income, you can perform an income survey. And ECICOG can help with income surveys. There are specific rules that must be followed to obtain an accurate income survey that can be used to qualify you for CDBG funding. So it can be if the project is like a citywide, like it's a drinking water project that helps the entire city or a wastewater treatment project, you have to do an income survey of the entire city. But if it's like a smaller neighborhood project, like water main replacement in just one area of town, you can just include income surveys for that area of town. Um, for the income surveys, cities usually provide like the boots on the ground work of sending out the income surveys and following up. But ECOG helps with the survey itself, making sure the surveys are valid and performing data analysis. So let us know if you would like to look into that. Another requirement for CDBG, which takes a little bit of time before you apply, is public notice requirements. You have to have a public hearing on the proposed activities prior to the submittal of the application. And then you also need to have a community development and housing needs assessment conducted at a public hearing. This is usually done at the same public hearing. And the community development housing needs assessment is valid for a year. So if you apply, in one round and you don't get it and you'd like to apply again, the community development and housing needs assessment can be used again, but you'll still have to go to a public hearing to give a notice about the proposed activities. And then the notice of public hearing must still be posted in a local newspaper, and you have to have the proof of publication to attach to your application. So that's just a little bit of, it takes a little bit of time and planning to make sure all of that is done prior to application. And then this slide's just a few, project types. So wastewater treatment plant improvements, water main replacements. It could be like a water system booster pump, so to like increase water pressure for a whole city. It could be connecting to a nearby water supply, and then it can be just drinking water treatment type like upgrades. And then new this year, stormwater improvement projects. Um, This is just a slide with with just a link to the current IDA program guidance. So if you want to go into a deep dive about CDBG, and then just a note that if you do receive a CDBG, you have to follow federal requirements like Davis-Bacon wages, Davis-Bacon related acts wages. You have to follow Build America, Buy America, depending on how much money you receive, how big the project is, and then follow other federal regulations. And then a certified grant administrator is required to administer these grants.
And
So,
that is really traditionally the role that ECOG plays, because people like Megan are certified grant administrators, and managing a federal grant is not for the faint of heart. It still requires a fair amount of effort on behalf of our city clerks and city administrators, but that's really the role we play, is to kind of be the experts and kind of help you walk you through the process.
so the next couple slides are just about the wastewater and drinking water treatment financial assistance program, or I'll just call it WTFAP. This is an Iowa only program, so it's not federally funded. Um, in the 2025 funding round, so this is offered just once a year, and in the 2025 funding round, which was due um, in November, there was $8 million available for eligible projects. They have not released the awards yet for that round of funding. Um, it should be announced anytime because they said it would be released around the end of the year, um, the end of 2025. So it provides grant funding for Iowa communities for wastewater and drinking water treatment facilities. So it's a little different than CDBG. It's not usually geared towards just water main replacements. It's usually has to be something to do with treatment technologies. It can be used in conjunction with other funding. Most cities that received this also received they also got an SRF loan, and they could also have received a CDBG. You could also get a USDA loan, etc. The grants are awarded by the state, so it's a combination of the Iowa Finance Authority, DNR, and the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. And like I said, it's just funded by state funds because it receives a portion of the tax on metered water. For the WTFAP, there are less restrictions than CDBG, but it's like I said, it's only available once per year, and you do need to fall into one of these 7 priority categories. So you do not, um, you're you can qualify if you don't have low to moderate income population, or you don't qualify as a disadvantaged community, but you would have to qualify for one of the other priority categories. So if your city is a disadvantaged community according to their metrics, that would qualify you as long as you had a project that's like dealing with wastewater or drinking water treatment. If you are not a disadvantaged community, if you're doing a project that improves the watershed or falls under any of these other categories, you could also qualify. So it's a little different, and if you have questions, you can let us know. For the disadvantaged community, there is a socioeconomic worksheet that DNR State Revolving Fund puts out. It's usually you fill it out as part of applying for an SRF loan as well. So that would qualify you as a disadvantaged community, but you can also use for drinking water projects the same CDBG 51% low to moderate income uh, American Community Survey data. So um, anyway, if you have questions on that, let me know. This is a little bit newer to us too. So, and it's just offered once a year, usually in the fall. And then they usually announce the awards early in the next year. So on the next slide, I did have the link to the socioeconomic assessment that SRF puts out. That's the most current link. And then there is a website about WTFAP if you'd like to find more information. The application is much smaller compared to CDBG. So it's got some different rules, and usually they do have to follow federal regulations because most cities that apply for these also receive an SRF loan, which has to follow federal requirements like Davis-Bacon wages, etc. Um, so the next slide is just a little bit about example projects that ECOG has worked on. This is in Anamosa. It's a wastewater treatment plant. It was out of compliance because during high flow events, such as big rainstorms, the wastewater treatment plant would be overwhelmed, and then untreated water would be released into the Wapsipinicon River. Anamosa determined there was a need to build a 30,000 gallon equalization basin. Or actually, I think it's 300,000 gallons. Its purpose is to hold the excess untreated wastewater for later treatment when, the wastewater treatment plant is not overwhelmed by excess water. It's substantially complete. I just went out there last week to look at it, but it's not fully closed out yet because there's a couple little things left to do. Another project that's going on right now that ECICOG is working on is in Marengo. Um, they are working on wastewater treatment facility improvements. They started work on this fall. The project includes installing a new force main to move their treated water outfall from the wastewater treatment plant. It also includes aerated lagoon upgrades and the addition of UV disinfection to make sure that what they release into the river is not high in E. coli. The next example is a water project. So in Hiawatha, they actually had two different phases of water main replacement CDBGs. They completed an income survey for just the part of town that was going to have new water mains. The water mains in these parts of town were older and undersized, and they were prone to breaks, and they were not large enough to support fire hydrants, so it was a fire safety issue. So the first phase was mostly along Robbins Road in Hiawatha, and then the next phase here was in a residential neighborhood mostly. So it was on Dawes, Clymer, and Thayer roads in Hiawatha. And here's a picture of like the staging of the new water pipes in Hiawatha. And those two Hiawatha projects were recently closed out. They're both completed. So overall, these are just some considerations for both programs. Basically, for project readiness, just think about if you think your community does qualify as more than 51% LMI. Do you have any engineering done? Have you had a facility plan made or a preliminary engineering report? Um, are you able to apply for a DNR construction permit before application? Do you have a cost estimate ready? All these things, funding secured. And then for timing, um, just know if you are awarded, in addition to the application, you'll have to allow some time for an environmental review before work can start. That's typical if you get an SRF loan as well. Um, and then um, just if you have any questions on any of this, feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk to cities about what the next steps are or about your project and see if what we think it would be best qualified for, if you should apply for one or both of these programs. And that's all I had. If you have any questions, let me know.
If anyone has any questions, maybe take a moment and drop it in the chat here. But while we're giving a few minutes for folks to do that, Megan, about how long does it take to prepare a grant application?
Usually for CDBG, just because of the public notice requirements, it takes a couple months. So
And if a community needed to do the income survey, that can take quite a bit of time, correct?
yes, yeah, it only takes a couple months once everything is already in place. So you'd have to have like the approved reports. Some of them can be approved while we're working on it, as long as they're pretty far along the process and they're already turned in and they're just waiting for approval. But yeah, if you need to do an income survey, it really depends on how long those take, but they usually take a few months, especially if they don't, you have to have a required number returned or they're invalid. So you have to really follow up with some people, which can take a bit of time sometimes. They can go fast or slow, just depends.
So definitely something you'd want to plan for
Y-
early.
Yes.
All right. Well, I
Okay.
have not seen any questions come up in the chat here.
Okay.
But if there are any, please feel free to reach out to Megan or anyone on the ECOG staff. We can get you connected with her.